I opened my eyes and saw fur. Thick, dark fur. And a smell, earthy, warm, wild. My brain refused to understand what I was looking at. But then it moved. A massive paw shifted just inches from my face. I froze. It was a bear. Not a dream, not a hallucination. A real bear, standing over me, its breath huffed out in a slow, almost bored rhythm. My body screamed to move, to run, but nothing worked. My limbs were lead. My mouth was dry. All I could do was blink and stare. I don't remember falling. 1 second, I was walking the ridge trail like I had 100 times before. The next, I was face down in moss and mud, with a burning pain in my leg and a sharp emptiness in my chest. I must have blacked out. And now this. The bear didn't growl, didn't swipe, didn't bite. It just stood there, shifting its weight, sniffing the air. Then its massive head lowered, slowly, and it looked right at me. Those eyes. Not angry, not curious, just still. Like it saw something in me that I couldn't see myself. Like it was waiting for something. I thought I was going to die. I waited for the snap of teeth, the crush of bones. But minutes passed. Then more. The bear stayed, silent, watching. I tried to push myself up, just a little, to get some kind of control back. Pain exploded from my right leg, white-hot and deep. I cried out. The bear jerked slightly, then backed up a step. But it didn't run. Why wasn't it running? Why wasn't it gone the second I moved? I managed to sit halfway up, propped against a fallen log. My leg was swollen and twisted, maybe broken. The nausea hit me next, and I retched into the pine needles. The bear stayed. I couldn't take my eyes off it. Every instinct I had screamed danger, but something else was louder. Confusion. This wasn't how wild animals behaved. Not here. Not now. Not with people. Took a few more steps back. Then it sat. It sat down, like a dog watching its owner, or a guard waiting for orders. Its eyes stayed locked on me, and then it yawned. A deep, chest-rattling yawn. And I almost laughed. Something in my brain cracked, maybe. The tension snapped, just a little. The sun was lower than I thought. Late afternoon. I'd been out cold for hours, and nobody knew where I was. I hadn't radioed in. Nobody was coming, except this bear. I rested my head back against the log and closed my eyes, just for a second. Maybe it would go away. Maybe I'd wake up in a hospital bed and this would all be part of the pain meds. But when I opened them again, it was still there. Watching, breathing, waiting. That's when I realized something that chilled me to the bone. It wasn't alone. I didn't move, couldn't. My right leg pulsed with fire, and every time I breathed in, the pain seemed to crawl higher up my spine. The bear was still in front of me, massive, silent, and somehow patient. I kept thinking if I blinked long enough, it would vanish. But it didn't. It only shifted its head slightly, glancing toward the trees behind it. Then I heard it. A crack. Not from my bones this time, but from the forest. A dry branch snapping. I turned my head, slow and cautious. Another bear. Smaller. Lighter fur. Probably a yearling. It stepped into the clearing like it owned the place. Looked at me once, then turned its head as if checking for something. And then, behind it, a third. This one was older. Huge. Scarred. One eye clouded over. If the first had made me freeze, this one turned my blood to ice. He moved with weight, with age, with a kind of deliberate authority. Like he'd seen more than he cared to admit. They formed a triangle around me. None of them made a sound. Just 3 massive creatures breathing in rhythm. Their eyes scanning me like a puzzle. I whispered under my breath. No sudden moves. Just breathe. The wind shifted. One of the bears, the younger one, sniffed the air and stepped closer. I tensed. My fingers dug into the dirt. Then it stopped, tilted its head, and backed off. What were they doing? Why were they just watching me? I wanted to scream, to crawl, to drag myself away, but there was nowhere to go. Every inch of me ached. My mouth was cracked from dehydration. My stomach growled so loud it felt like shouting. And they just stood there like a jury. Then the strangest thing happened. The younger bear walked to the edge of the clearing, picked up something with its mouth, dry branches. Not many, just a little pile. Carried them a few steps, then dropped them right in front of me. What? My first thought was trap, or a joke if bears could joke. But there it was. A pile of sticks, laid down like an offering. The bear looked at me again, then walked back and sat. I stared at the sticks. What the hell was I supposed to do with them? Burn them? Build a shelter? signal with them? I had no fire starter, no food, no water, no idea. But that gesture, that single, deliberate act, broke something inside me. I started to cry, not loud, not shaking, just quiet, embarrassed tears. Not because I was dying, but because I didn't understand. And something about that, being helpless in front of wild animals who weren't acting wild, made me feel smaller than I ever had. The older bear finally turned its back and walked toward the treeline. The other two followed. But before they disappeared into the green, the youngest one stopped, turned its head, and looked at me one more time. Then they were gone. I was alone, surrounded by broken twigs, pain, and a question I couldn't stop asking. Why didn't they kill me? The first night was the worst. I thought I was hallucinating when I saw them again. Just before dusk, the three bears returned. They didn't come close. They stood at a distance, half-shadowed by the trees, their shapes like statues against the fading light. I was too weak to even react. Hunger had turned into a slow, dull ache, and my leg felt like it was swelling against my skin. But they stayed. They didn't move for hours. I drifted in and out of shallow, uncomfortable sleep, waking every few minutes in panic, expecting claws or teeth. But every time I opened my eyes, they were still there, watching, breathing. By morning, the younger one was gone. Only the old bear and the middle-sized one remained. I watched them move through the underbrush with slow, deliberate steps. They circled the clearing, pausing now and then to sniff or listen. I kept trying to tell myself it was normal. Maybe they were just curious. Maybe they smelled blood. But that theory collapsed the second night. That's when the howling started. Coyotes. More than one. Close. It was after midnight. I hadn't slept more than a minute at a time. The cold was gnawing at me now, and I had started shaking uncontrollably. I heard the yips and high-pitched cries echoing through the trees, circling closer. And then one of them stepped into the clearing. It was a scrappy thing, all ribs and wiry muscle. Its eyes locked on me immediately. I didn't even have the strength to throw a rock. Not that it would have mattered. It lowered its head, baring its teeth. I thought, well, this is it. Of all things, I'd be taken out by a damn coyote. But before it made a move, a sound cracked through the air, deep and guttural. A growl. From behind me, the young bear had returned. It burst from the shadows like a freight train, charging the coyote with a roar that rattled my bones. The coyote didn't even try to fight. It yelped and bolted, crashing through the brush so fast it barely touched the ground. The bear didn't chase. It stood where the coyote had been, then turned slowly and looked at me. For a second, we just stared at each other. Then it walked back into the trees. The next morning, I cried again. Not from pain, not from fear, from something else. Gratitude. Real, raw, quiet gratitude. Because I knew, deep down, I wouldn't have survived the night without them. I couldn't explain it, but something in me shifted. These animals weren't just tolerating me. They were guarding me. I don't know why. I don't know what they saw in me, but for the first time since I'd fallen, I didn't feel entirely alone. And that changed everything. The sun was higher now. I could feel it warming the side of my face where the dirt had dried. It had been 3 days since I fell. Maybe 4. Time didn't feel real anymore. My mouth was cracked, my tongue thick and useless. I hadn't eaten a thing. Hadn't had a real sip of water either. But the bears were still there. Mostly at a distance now. They came and went throughout the day. The old one stayed the longest, always just out of reach, like he was guarding some invisible boundary. The younger one was more restless, curious. It came closer sometimes, watching me with that tilted head, like it was trying to figure out what I was. I lay there and thought about my son. Hadn't seen him in over 2 years. We'd fought about everything and nothing. Just another broken thing I never got around to fixing. His face was blurry in my head now, but I could still hear his voice when he was 5, asking if bears could talk, if they had families too. Back then I just laughed and said no. Now, lying broken in the woods, I wasn't so sure. I heard rustling again, not far. I pushed myself up with both arms, teeth clenched. The pain in my leg felt like knives under the skin, but I managed to sit. The younger bear came back into the clearing. But this time it was carrying something. First, I thought it was more sticks. Then I saw the flash of silver. A fish, still flopping slightly, fresh. It walked up, stopped maybe 10 feet from me, and dropped the fish on the ground. Then it backed up, sat down, and watched. I blinked at it like an idiot. What was I supposed to do? I could barely crawl. No fire, no tools. But damn it, I wanted that fish. I dragged myself forward 1 inch at a time. My hands tore open on rocks and dry pine bark. My legs screamed with every movement. Sweat poured into my eyes. The bear didn't move. It just sat there, watching, waiting. I reached the fish, picked it up with shaking hands. And for a second, I held it like it was a diamond. Then I did the only thing I could. I bit into it. It was raw, cold, slippery, but it was food. Real food. I chewed, gagged, swallowed, and cried. Tears ran down my cheeks and dropped onto the fish. I hadn't cried like that in years. Not since the divorce. Not even when my father died. Something in me cracked. Not just from pain or fear or hunger, but from that stupid gesture. That fish. A bear brought me a damn fish. And it felt more human than most people I'd known. Later, I tried to crawl toward the sound of water. I figured the bear had gotten the fish from the river nearby. If I could get there, maybe I'd have a chance. Maybe I could drink. I made it maybe 20 yards before I passed out again. When I came to, the old bear was standing beside me. Just standing. Silent. Like a shadow I'd grown used to seeing. Like something that wasn't going to leave until this story was over. By the 5th day, I stopped pretending this was temporary. I wasn't being rescued. Not yet. Maybe not at all. If someone had been looking, they would have found me by now. I hadn't radioed in. Hadn't left a note. I was alone. Except for them. The bears. I started talking to them. Out loud. At first, just whispers under my breath. Half to stay sane. Half because silence had grown too heavy. But then it turned into real conversations. Like they were people. Like they were listening. Guess it's just you and me again, I said one morning as the younger one approached from the trees. He blinked and sat a few feet away. I decided his name was Scout. He had that curious energy, always looking, sniffing, wandering just a little farther than the others. The middle-sized one, the quiet observer, I named Birch. Steady, calm. He never got too close, but he was always there. And the old one, the one with the scar and the foggy eye, I called Ghost. Because sometimes he'd vanish for hours, and I'd think he was gone. Then he'd reappear, watching from the shadows like he'd never left. Scout came closer that afternoon. Closer than ever before. I could see the texture in his fur, the dirt on his paws. I lifted my hand slowly. He didn't move. I held my breath. "Hey!" I whispered. "It's okay." He leaned in, sniffed my fingers, then, to my complete disbelief, brushed his nose gently against my palm. I didn't breathe for 3 whole seconds. His fur was coarse and warm. His breath smelled like river water and pine. He pulled back slowly, gave one last look, and trotted away. I was shaking, not from fear, from something else, something like awe. Later, I found myself telling them stories. About my son. About my time in the Marines. About the ranger station. I told them about the storm that collapsed the old fire tower in 2017. About the black bear that stole our chili stash once. I didn't even know if I was making sense. But the words kept spilling out. Maybe I was losing it. Or maybe I was just waking up. One evening, I said, "You know, Ghost, if you were human, you'd be the guy sitting in the back of the bar, saying nothing, but knowing everything." He blinked. That's it. Just one long, slow blink. And it felt like agreement. There was something healing in saying things out loud. Like the pain in my chest wasn't just physical. Like I'd been holding so much inside for so long. And only now, broken, starved, forgotten in the woods, was I finally letting it go. I didn't feel alone anymore. Not really.
If you love stories about wildlife rescue, click the subscribe button below. Here's how the button looks on different devices. Every subscription helps spread these stories and raise awareness. The more people know, the more animals get the help they need. And remember, subscribing is completely free. Click subscribe now and join us in protecting wildlife.
They were gone. I woke up that morning to silence. Not the usual kind. Not wind or creaking trees or birdsong in the distance. But a thick, unnatural silence. The kind that presses against your ears. I called out, "Ghost? Scout? Birch?" Nothing. I turned my head painfully, scanning the tree line. The spot where Ghost usually stood was empty. The clearing felt colder, wider. My body registered the absence before my mind fully caught up. They were gone. I waited an hour, then 2. Still nothing. My gut twisted. I didn't know why I expected them to stay forever. They were wild animals, not pets, not friends. But it felt like something had been taken from me. Maybe they knew I was strong enough now. Maybe they'd done what they came to do, whatever the hell that was. Still, it felt like abandonment, and I hated how much it hurt, so I decided to move. I wrapped my leg the best I could with shredded fabric from the lining of my jacket, dug a stick out from the fallen brush and made a crude crutch. Then I started crawling. I didn't have a plan, just a direction. There was a ridge that overlooked the valley a mile or so west. If I could make it there, maybe I could get signal. Maybe someone would see me. Maybe I'd get lucky. The crawl was agony. Every branch, every stone, every dip in the forest floor felt like a personal insult. My leg was swollen to twice its size. I was sweating through my shirt even though the air was cold. I stopped often, to breathe, to cry, to swear, but I kept going. The sun moved slowly across the sky. I lost track of time. My world shrank to inches. Hands, elbows, drag, push, repeat. By the time I saw the roof, I thought I was hallucinating. It was half covered in moss, barely visible through the trees. An old hunting cabin. Forgotten, rotting, but it was shelter. I laughed. It sounded like a cough and a sob had a baby. I reached the porch, hauled myself up the broken steps. The door was missing, leaning half off its hinges. Inside was dark and smelled of wet wood and dust. But I didn't care. I collapsed just inside the threshold. Everything hurt. My leg, my arms, my chest, even my eyes. I lay there, staring at the warped ceiling beams, feeling the warmth drain from my body. And I thought, this might be it. I closed my eyes, tried to picture my son, tried to remember my own name. Then something shifted outside. A branch snapped. Footsteps, but not human. I opened my eyes just enough to see a shadow pass by the doorway. Then I passed out again. I woke to the sound of breathing. Not mine. Something slow, heavy, rhythmic, familiar. I blinked against the dim light filtering through the cracks in the roof. Pain was still there, sharp, constant, but distant, like it had dulled while I was unconscious. My body felt like clay. And then I saw them. All three. Scout stood just outside the doorway. Birch farther back, near a leaning birch tree like some kind of joke. And Ghost, motionless in the shadows, as always. They didn't move, didn't come closer. Something was different. I sat up slowly, propping myself against the splintered doorframe. My arms trembled, my head pounded. But I was awake, aware, and I could feel it, a shift in the air. This wasn't a visit. This was a goodbye. I tried to speak, but my voice cracked and disappeared before the words could form. My throat was too dry, my chest too tight. Scout was the first to move. He stepped forward, just enough to cross the beam of light spilling through the trees. And in his jaws something red. He dropped it just outside the threshold. A fox, dead, fresh, its fur still glossy, eyes half open. Hadn't been mauled, just killed, clean, precise. I stared at it, not sure what to feel. It wasn't food. Not for me. I couldn't cook it, couldn't eat it raw again. So what was it? A gift? A gesture? Scout backed away. Birch turned his head slowly. Ghost didn't move at all. I felt tears rise again, uninvited. But I didn't fight them. I let them come. Silent, hot. They ran down my cheeks and into my collar. I whispered, barely audible, "Thank you." Scout turned and vanished into the brush without a sound. Birch followed. Ghost stayed a moment longer. Our eyes locked. One last time. That cloudy eye, scarred and ancient, fixed on me like it could see something far beyond my skin. And then he too turned. Slowly, deliberately, he stepped into the trees, swallowed by green. The clearing was silent again. The fox lay at the edge of the porch, like some kind of sacred thing. I couldn't stop staring at it. It didn't make sense. None of it made sense. But it didn't need to anymore. I wasn't afraid. And somehow that mattered more than anything. The sound came like a dream. Muffled, broken, unreal. Voices. Real human voices. Calling out. I didn't answer at first. Thought maybe I was imagining it. But then came the crunch of boots on forest floor, the static of a walkie, the sharp snap of a name I hadn't heard in days. Reed. Hey, we've got him. I opened my eyes. Blinding light hit me. A figure knelt over me. Tan uniform, ranger patch, beard. Another voice behind him, urgent and fast. Then hands. Hands on my chest, checking pulse, lifting my arm. A needle. Cold water against my lips. Everything blurred. I think I passed out again. Next thing I remember was the chopper. The medics looked at me like I was a ghost. One kept muttering under his breath about how I was even alive. Dehydrated, infected, severe trauma to the leg, but somehow stable. "You should be dead," one of them said, not unkindly. "You were out there over a week. No shelter, no food, no heat." I didn't answer. I just looked out the window as the trees shrank beneath us. They asked what happened. I told them I fell, crawled, found a cabin, left out the rest. Because how do you explain it? How do you say that bears watched over you, brought you food, chased away predators? That they sat with you in silence while you talked about your life and cried over regrets? You don't. So I stayed quiet. The hospital was warm and sterile, the kind of place that erases the wild. They patched me up, ran tests, fed me pudding and pills. Family came, my ex-wife, even my son. He didn't say much, just sat there for a long time. Then one day he asked, "Did something happen to you out there?" I nodded. "Yeah, but not what you'd expect." He didn't push. Weeks passed. My leg healed slowly. I walked with a cane. They offered counseling. I didn't go. Instead, I went back. Not deep, just to the trail. I stood there for hours watching the tree lean, listening. Nothing moved, but I felt it, like a pressure behind the eyes, like being watched without fear, like something sacred had passed through me and left a trace. Some nights I still see them in dreams. Scout sniffing my hand, Birch standing guard, Ghost, with that one cloudy eye, staring straight through me. And I always wake with the same feeling, like they gave me something I'll never be able to name. I never told anyone the full story, but I carry it. Every step, every breath, every quiet morning I get to see another sunrise. Carry it all.